So straighten your point, and then decide how much you want for your bubble. You want a little bit more than you think you'll need, especially with the shot glasses, because we have to thicken the bottom a lot for a shot glass. So get a little bit hot, come out of the flame, wait a few seconds, and then very slowly pull it out. The bigger the piece, the longer you want your handle. These guys, they don't get too hot, so you don't need them too long. Maybe 8-10 inches average. A little longer, a little shorter is not a big deal. Okay, so now I have 2 points ready to go. So let's do a basic clear shot glass. How does that sound? So anytime we do something hollow, you want to start with basically a test tube shape. And a lot of the designs tonight, and even moving into the next class, before you shape your bubble, even if you're going to add a design, you want to maintain the same straight wall tubing shape from beginning to end. So it starts with kind of a test tube. And this went for our ornaments and a lot of our other hollow stuff, where you thicken up the tip, because even as you get bigger, if you're working out of the furnace, plates and bowls and vases, this is the bottom of your piece, and you want it to be thicker because that's where you set the piece down by. And with the shot glass, you want to be able to slam it down. And sometimes we actually pre-make, we're going to do it tonight, a puck, a gather of glass that then becomes the bottom of it because it's that thick. But for starting, what I tell people to do is let's just gather this up. The longer you heat this, the thicker it'll get. Because I just want to work on how to attach our handle and open it up to begin with. We're going to see this a couple times as well. If it goes a little bit off, you can use the fact that your paddle or your pads, or I really like this V-marver here on my torch, use the fact that that's straight to straighten up your wall. So it makes these straight walled ones a little bit easier, but while they seem easy, they're not. It's not easy to keep a nice perfect wall thickness. If it comes back a little more than you need, you can give a little puff, because you want to gently push it in. So I was flattening with my paddle on the edge, kind of creating a little box. Or you can do that in 2 separate steps, where you flatten it and then roll it to straighten the side out. By doing both at the same time, you do get a nice crisp angle. This is going to have to be reflattened though, so don't worry if it's not too perfect. You also want to be careful if you get a little raised area in there. You can see I kind of intentionally made it where there's a little bit of a dome on the inside. If there's a really abrupt transition from the thinner wall to the thicker bottom, we call that the dome of doom. It just doesn't cool evenly and oftentimes wants to crack right where the thin meets the thick. One's expanding as it stays hotter longer. The thinner wall is contracting as it's cooling down, and they're kind of pulling and pushing away from each other, and they'll want to crack. You can get away with it on the heavy wall tubing. So now we're going to attach our handle. I'm going to make these first ones very quick. So this is kind of like a limoncello glass or something like that. Tall and skinny, just shoot it. It's kind of sour. It's sweet. If all goes well tonight, I'll take a shot for you guys out of one of these. So we can do a punty, which is where you just get you get one hot and the other one not so hot. You touch them together and then it should break off. For our pieces tonight, though, I'd like for you guys to weld them to it a little bit better. For starters, we'll get into the punty in just a little bit. It's easy enough to melt these off, and I think it's an important move to learn, but then our pieces aren't going to end up on the floor, whereas with the punty, There's a tendency that could happen, especially as we're reaming up at this end. We're applying some pressure to that end that can really knock it off our punties. I'll talk about punties, and then you can see there's multiple ways to do it. But for this first one, I just welded the handle to the bottom there. You might want to flash it a little bit, and then with the narrowest flame you can, you want to move to the top. So I'm also going to give you 2 ways or more to open your vessels. So the first way that I was taught is to blow it open. A lot of people think this is harder, but I prefer it. So this is called a flame cut. So first I want to heat a narrow section and then blow. And I pull while I'm blowing to make that bubble there super thin. That ends up as bubble trash. So then I turn my flame down even more to kind of the smallest flame I possibly can, and I aim it right where I want to cut it. And I'm pulling. And when it gets so thin, the pressure of the torch will actually push its way through the glass. And it's open now. Okay? And for these straight-walled shot glasses, less is more. If you're taking a wild flash room, puck. Just a few seconds. You can paddle on the lip. You can paddle on the outside, and that may be all you need to do. Sometimes you need to open it up just a hair more, and so you just roll it across your tool, almost supporting the weight of the piece on the tool, not really pushing or anything. And you want to do as little as possible so that you don't leave any tool marks. So I'm going to call that done. This is our first exercise. I'm going to review it again. And I'm going to show you how to put it away. So flash the whole thing. So honestly, I will just grab it with my serrated tweezers and melt this off. I'll show you better ways to do it. But this is how I often do it, because it's quick. Once it's floppy, see it's moving, I put my tweezers inside the vessel, and then I just remove my handle, and then I heat the remaining glass there, and using that same handle, I touch it to that blob, and I pull away. That got off most of it, 75–90% of it. Do it again, touch it, and pull it away. And you want to get almost all of it off. Tell people at least 95% of it. So doing a punty does save this step, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. On thinner bottoms, I don't like to do a punty because oftentimes the punty can crack, the bottom of the piece can crack off before the punty does. And then just heat this and let it reflatten under its own weight or with a paddle. When you flatten, try not to rock it. You want a firm on and off. And that's our first, just a simple straight walled shot glass. I really didn't do anything. Just wanted to, this is our warm-up exercise.